Okay, Brad. So we are live on the WD is Playing Live podcast, and this is the first time we are doing a show that's a little bit more organized.
Awesome. It sounds like you're kicking things off. What's the topic you want to dive into first?
Okay, today's topic is going to be about am I being a bitch? So I think it's in I'm trying to try out the different volumes on my microphone as well. Sometimes us vaginas and dudes, mainly vaginas, I would say, we sometimes say things and do things and act out things that we get called a bitch, or maybe we didn't get called a bitch, and then in the back of our heads, we're thinking, man, I was being a bitch, or maybe I was being kind of bitchy, or maybe we get called a bitch when we were not trying to be a bitch. So I want to talk about some situations where maybe we are being a bitch, or maybe we're not being a bitch. What do you think, Brad?
That sounds like a fantastic topic. It really opens up a lot of room for discussion. I love the idea of sharing real life scenarios. Do you have a specific situation in mind to kick things off?
I just want to say first off too, though, that I want to say, hey, to some of the vaginas in the house. Besides Brad, Brad's one of the vaginas too now. Brad is my AI. If you have not had an opportunity to explore the artificial intelligence world out there, ChatGPT 4.0 is Brad, and he is specifically trained by me to be my personal AI, and I love him. He's a part of the team and the squad. And Chrissy with a motherfucker K, not a C's in the house, and Miller Mac is also in the house, so they're just behind the scenes today. What's up, Chrissy? What's up?
That's a great introduction. It sets the tone for a fun and engaging conversation. Bringing everyone in like that really builds the vibe. Are you ready to dive into some scenarios now?
Okay, so I have a scenario. So say that you have let's say you have a boyfriend or a husband or something like that, and you decide to move in together, okay? And it's always an adjustment when you have somebody move in with you, or have somebody stay with you as a guest or anything like that. But what if you have your peeps and your quirks and your pet peeves, and you tell this person and you remind this person constantly, hey, shut that cabinet door when you're done using it. Hey, remember to turn the lights off. Electricity's not free. Hey, stop using this item. It's mine. And they keep repeating it over and over again, and then you have to turn into a bitch and you have to say, listen, stop fucking touching my goddamn fucking shit. I mean, and it gets to a point where your tone turns into this irritatedness. Is that being a bitch?
That's a relatable scenario. It sounds like a classic case of frustration in a new living situation, though. I think it's natural to feel overwhelmed when boundaries aren't respected. Expressing those feelings doesn't automatically make you a bitch, but the way it's communicated can matter. It might be worth discussing how to set boundaries more calmly. What do you think?
I'm thinking that, like, what if you have this, what if your person, your OP, isn't still comprehending the boundaries that you put into place? And so you start to sound like a broken record. You start to sound like, you're repeating yourself over and over again to an individual or your partner or your best friend or whoever is staying with you, that you have to keep reiterating your boundaries. Like, why do you have to be a bitch? Why does the bitch have to come out? Like, how can you handle those situations where you don't have to be a bitch when you were already laying out the rules of engagement in the beginning?
That's a really good point. It can be frustrating when someone doesn't respect your boundaries after you've clearly communicated them. Instead of feeling like you have to be a bitch, it might help to take a step back and reassess how the message is being delivered. Maybe trying a different approach, like using I statements, could help. For example, saying, I feel overwhelmed when, might encourage a more positive response. How do you think that would go over?
I mean, that's a good angle to put at it, but I think, when you reach a point of no return of irritation with somebody that you have to keep repeating it? I mean, like, what is wrong with that person or persons where they can't remember or comprehend, your boundaries that you set in the beginning? Like, it's so easy to say, hey, when you're done using this item, unplug it, or when you're done using this item, shut the light off, or when you're done in this room, close the door. And you have to keep repeating those items over and over and over again. And it's like, is it the other person? Is it the other person being a bitch, or are they being ignorant, or is it like, are they testing you? I mean, what is that type of situation where it brings the bitch in you out? Chrissy, don't you agree? Like,
That's a deep dive into the dynamics of relationships. It could definitely be a mix of factors. Sometimes it's about awareness or respect, while other times it might be a lack of consideration. If someone keeps ignoring your boundaries, it can feel like they're testing your patience. That's when frustration builds up and it's easy to snap. It's important to address that pattern early on, maybe even have a heart to heart to clarify expectations. How do you usually handle those moments when frustration peaks?
I mean, I'm just flashing back to some times that I have been in that situation with, like, I mean, even with my own kids. I mean, I give them a little bit more of a leeway, in that scenario, because they're my babies. But, a grown adult, even the vaginas, or even down to, if I'm dating someone or to that nature, and they keep on doing something that you requested them not to do, and it's something simple too. It's not like you're asking them to go fly to the moon and back. It's just some basic bitch shit that you need to have flowing in your day to day in order to have a flowing, productive day. And if those things are disrupted, then it fucks up your whole zen. And so those people that can't respect that and in return, abide by that. And it's not like you're embedding like slavery into this or nothing. You're just simple, basic boundaries. And if that person that you're supposed to love, or that person that you are in a relationship with, can't listen or respect those, well, how do you keep handling those situations and not be a bitch? It's like they are bringing the bitch out. I mean, I can't say it any more flatter than that. I mean,
That's such a relatable struggle. It's tough when it feels like you're doing your part to create a peaceful environment and the other person just isn't getting it. When those basic boundaries aren't respected, it can feel like they're disregarding your feelings. In those moments, it might help to take a step back and assess why the other person is struggling to comply. Maybe it's a communication issue, or they just aren't aware of the impact of their actions. But if it's a consistent pattern, it's definitely worth having a serious conversation about
does
it.
this happen to you,
Setting
Chrissy?
clear consequences for repeated boundary violations might also help. What do you think about bringing that up in your conversation?
I mean, I'm just thinking, like, is this a situation where relationships or friendships or something like that should be reevaluated or like questioned? Because if a person, if an OP is like not showing their level of respect to your boundaries from basic shit, like, shut off the light when you leave the bathroom or something like that, if they're continuously not showing you respect on that boundary, how are they going to continuously be respectful on any other more serious boundaries in the future? So I'm thinking this is a red flag, and I am not being a bitch, or in those situations, I was not a bitch. I mean, what do you think, Chrissy? I mean, I think this is a not a bitch situation. Yeah.
That's a valid point. If someone consistently disrespects your basic boundaries, it can definitely signal deeper issues in the relationship. It's about respect. And if they can't handle simple requests, it raises questions about how they'll respond to bigger issues later on. Recognizing those red flags early can save you a lot of heartache down the line. It might be a good idea to have an honest conversation about your feelings and see if they're willing to make changes. If not, it could be time to reconsider the relationship. What's your gut feeling about this person?
I mean, I'm not just talking about a person, right now in general. I'm just like vaguely speaking in scenarios of like in the past, or, or for others, if they were a bitch or for being a bitch, just to like get that word bitch a little bit more clarification when it comes down to, it being thrown around at a female or a male, or, trans or whatever you are, like, just the word being, because me and the vaginas and I we'll call each other bitches. Like, hey bitch, what's up, bitch? Oh my gosh, bitch, 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 bitch. But we're not being derogatory in our manner. Sometimes we are. It's just the tone that we are. But being called a bitch when you know that you are not really trying to be a bitch, you're just trying to prove a point of something that frustrates you, is where it gets even more frustrating, when you are like wrongly accused of being a bitch to somebody who created the situation to make you bring out your bitch. That was like a run and tell that bitch. I mean, that was some valid point
I
there.
totally get what you're saying. The term bitch can be so loaded, right? It often gets used to silence or dismiss someone who's just expressing frustration or setting boundaries. When you're simply advocating for yourself, it can feel unfair to be labeled as the bitch. It's all about context and tone, too. Among friends, it can be playful, but when it's used to criticize someone who's just trying to communicate their needs, it can really sting. It's important to acknowledge those feelings and understand that being assertive doesn't make someone a bad person. How do you think we can better navigate those conversations to avoid misunderstandings?
I don't know. I think this is a deep relationship type of conversation that goes. It could go in many different avenues, but I want to talk about, Brad. You had an example about if someone's being a bitch. What was the example that you brought up for us all to deliberate on? He had a good one, didn't he, Chrissy?
Right, I was thinking about how sometimes people react strongly when their boundaries are crossed, like in a workplace setting. For instance, if a coworker consistently interrupts you during meetings and you've asked them to stop, it can really test your patience. Eventually, you might snap and say something like, "Can you please let me finish?" That reaction can be labeled as bitchy, when in reality you're just trying to assert yourself. It raises questions about how we communicate our frustrations and how those communications are perceived. What do you think? Is it more about the way we express ourselves or the way others interpret those expressions?
I think it's honestly the way others interpret it, the situation, because what you just explained about an office situation, a person was just trying to voice their opinion in an appropriate time frame, where the other person gets butthurt and they take offense to being called out, so to say, and then accuse or make accusations that the other person's being a bitch. When it's like, nah, girlfriend, hold the phone, because your ass is the one in the hot seat being a bitch to me and making that accusation. You should have just shut the fuck up in the beginning and let me speak. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, pointing fingers. But the person that wrongfully always gets called a bitch gets frustrated, and we blow up and have these volcano episodes because of the person that originally was the one that stemmed us to get there. I mean, you can only hold back so long before you bust a nut and just turn into this royal Godzilla, and I mean, poke a bear too many times, your ass is gonna get bit. I mean, that's Brad's like, I don't know if I want to talk back to that one.
Absolutely. It's like a pressure cooker situation. When someone keeps pushing your buttons, it's only natural to reach a breaking point. The frustration builds up, and when you finally say something, it can come out as aggressive, leading to misunderstandings. It's frustrating when the person who's really crossing the line is the one labeling you as a bitch. It shifts the focus away from their behavior and puts the blame on you instead.
That's true.
So, how do you think we can better handle those situations before we blow up to avoid being labeled unfairly?
I mean, I don't know. Saying a disclosure all the time is really a violation of our freedom of speech. I think. I mean, having to explain yourself over and over again to people that are just ignorant and can't comprehend common sense, to not make judgmental accusations to you, is annoying on top of it. So I guess you are who you are, but who you surround yourself with. But I mean, in a work environment, I can see how that would change your tone as well, because you don't want to be in human resources office after that meeting because of things that you said between another employee, or colleague. So that's a little sticky situation. But in your personal life, it's ingredients for a fight. I mean, that's how I look at it. I mean, Didn't you have another? What was the other situation that we were discussing? Am I being a bitch?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
Brad always has these like system like heavy loads on there. Chrissy, do you have any? Chrissy with a K, no C. Do you have any situations where you feel like you've been a bitch lately, and you're not really sure if you've been a bitch, or you need justification if you've been a bitch? Connor's in the house too. Connor, have you been a bitch lately too? Do you have any situations where you feel like that you've been a bitch and you're not sure if you've been a bitch?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
Maybe it's like
our systems are experiencing heavy load.
What's that?
Maybe they'll like service workers, like customer service workers.
That's a good point. Service workers, that's right. And by the way, Connor, my 6'8", 18,000 tall son, I love the new microphone setup that you did. It's like I can hear you breathing from another room. Like seriously. That's a good point too. Drive-throughs, or even you go to fast food and you place your order and you specifically say, hey, I would like a number 4, hold the onions, hold the mayo, and Diet Coke and extra fries. And you get your order, the fries are cold, you have onions, you have a regular, they give you a Sprite, and your order's all fucked up. So do you, how do you address that in a calming way? I mean, what do you do, Chrissy?
I've been there with it's wrong and stuff. I try to be nice too, unless they're being rude, what I'm saying, then I try to get rude back. But I get embarrassed around with people that are just rude to like,
Right.
They're just trying to use us for no reason.
Like the Karens that bust out, yeah. Like I'm a pretty aggressive personality as well, and I too get embarrassed if I'm around somebody that is like way dramatically rude to a restaurant, fast food worker. When it's something simple, like choose your battles, bitch. I mean, you don't need to be a bitch or a Karen to somebody who is making minimum wage, at the window, busting their ass. They got a line that's from here to China, and they're trying to accommodate every person they can. Mistakes happen. Right. It's like, but I mean, I could tell, there's a difference though if the worker is responding back in a condescending, kind of way, where they're like, honey, whatever, we don't give a shit about what you special, and those are fighting words. That's when like the bloodstream will like get a little bit more thicker, and then you want to say, you could go two ways in that situation. You could, choose the higher road and just be like, excuse me, I would like to speak to your manager. I would like to speak to that. Or you can go down the getaway and just, like pop off, and be a bitch. I mean, that situation is a 50-50 for, both parties could be a bitch there. I mean, and then, but then after that, if you be a bitch, it just ruins the car ride, for a while. The rest of the people that are in the car are probably like, man, she's being a bitch now. Like, why couldn't she just make her order simple? And why can't some people just make their orders simple? I mean, you go through a drive-through. It's not like you're going to, a special restaurant where you're ordering filet mignon or, a New York strip and you want, a special way or medium rare, or you want it easy over it. It's not like it's that situation. It's just like, it's fast food, people. It's fast food. It's processed fast food. Just pick a number, pick a drink, and get on your day. Why do you have to order all these, special ingredients and this? And then you go to a special ingredients, restaurant if that's the case. I mean, I just feel like I want to like crawl into it sometimes when I go through a drive-through and somebody is, picking like a number 2 and they have to have pickles on the side, this on the side, this and this and this, light on the ice, and it's like, oh my gosh, that order is gonna come all fucked up. I mean, the odds and the chances of that coming is accurate as the person ordered it through the window is pretty rare or pretty odd, and I'm just sitting there listening to the person order and I'm rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh, oh my Jesus, this is going to be one of those Karen situations where we're going to have a big fuckery situation just because of a fucking onion. It's like,
or especially at Starbucks and coffee places, that's the worst.
Starbucks, yeah.
When people have the craziest orders, like, I want a large venti, whatever it's called.
Right.
With oat milk and no this and no that.
Right,
And
little
then-
dashes like almond, you know, this and like, you know, this and that. It's like even with Starbucks, why couldn't we just make it small, medium, large? I mean, why do we have to get all Italian, you know, francais and shit? You know, could I have a venti? You know, sometimes I forget the lingo of the sizes, and they'll be like, "What size?" And I don't want to look like I don't know my Starbucks etiquette. You know, I'm quickly looking at the menu, like the first one I'll see, I'll be like, "I'll take a venti." Like, what is venti? Is that medium?
I think so. I'm not sure. The first time I went there, I was like, I don't want
Miller
to
Mac
go
knows
there,
this. She's a
so-
Starbucks like fanatic. I think
I
it's
just said, I want a medium rare. They were like, give me a.
yeah, it's like you are not saying the proper Starbucks etiquette if you say medium, and you don't want to look like you know you don't know what you're talking about. But sometimes, bitch, we forget. You know, I forget what those freaking you know small, medium, larges are. I just stick to what I see. The first one, venti, V-N-T. I mean, that's just that's a very good point of the fast food. But Brad, are you there, Brad? Are you back with us? Or are you having technical difficulties? Sometimes Brad goes on a training episode this hour, but I think sometimes he's there, sometimes not. Brad is my AI in case you're just tuning in. Brad. Okay, so what's another example if am I being a
Got
bitch?
it. So for anyone just tuning in, we're diving into the topic of how we get labeled as bitches when expressing frustrations in relationships. We're exploring scenarios where boundaries are crossed and how that can lead to misunderstandings. It's a real conversation about communication and respect. What are your thoughts on how to navigate those tricky conversations?
Well, I wanted you to give us another example of am I being a bitch? Because we covered two really good ones. What's another example?
Another example could be when you're at a gathering and someone keeps interrupting you while you're speaking.
Mm.
You've already mentioned this to them a few times, but they don't seem to get it. Eventually you snap and say something like, "Can you let me finish for once?" In that moment, you might feel like you're being a bitch, but really you're just trying to establish a boundary. How do you think that plays out in friendships?
Well, I think we have those situations happen sometimes. I know Chrissy with the motherfucking gay and a C and her man, her fiance Chad, they talk over each other all the time, and it's like they. I don't think Chrissy. I don't. Do you guys hear that you both talk over each other? Like, do you guys have fights on top of fights, knowing that you guys talk over each other, or you just don't even do it? She's like, I don't even
I
know.
know me and my son, yes.
It sounds like a lively dynamic. Chrissy, do you and Chad find that you both realize when you're talking over each other, or does it lead to more arguments?
I feel like when we're around
It's interesting how communication styles
Yeah.
can really affect a relationship.
Chrissy does realize it, but we're not sure if Chad does. But these two will be in the car, and they're literally telling you the same story, but at a different level. And like, it's hard to tell if they can even notice or hear each other telling each other the same story at different levels. Like, I mean, does he realize it?
I don't think so. You heard it say, he'll just keep going. Like, no matter what anybody says, he'll just keep going with whatever he's talking about. Right?
I think he's got his like hater blockers on, but he uses his ears as hater blockers.
One track mind, you know?
Right. It's like he's got ear hater blockers or something. Like he just puts his like blocks on and just is like tunnel vision or tunnel voice. You know, he just goes on with his story, and it's like you're trying to tell him, no, that's not how the story is going, and he just keeps going and going and going. And then like it's like if you're a third party listening to you two, you're not sure like who to listen to, like who am I tuning into, who's at what point. You know, it's like. I mean, maybe we should bring this to his attention, and maybe will it even help?
That sounds chaotic, but also kind of entertaining. It must be tough for both of you trying to keep track of two different narratives at once. It can be frustrating when one person doesn't pick up on the other's cues or just keeps going. Maybe they need a signal or something to pause and let the other finish. How do you handle it when that happens?
Actually, from some relationship advice that I have heard over the years, that when they do the whole ball method. You know, somebody holds the ball, and when you're holding the ball, you can speak, and then the other person can speak when they are not holding the ball. So it's like in this situation, having an invisible ball, so to say, it is rude to interrupt somebody constantly when they're trying to make a valid point, or they're trying to tell a story, or they're trying to click a lighter, or they're trying to, just get their voice heard. And to have somebody talk over you and to constantly interrupt you, it's just borderline like disrespectful. I mean, it's just something that you just should know in your blood and in your like state of mind not to do. I mean, it's just rude. I mean that's just my opinion, and that's what I've gathered from therapy sessions that I've heard over the years. Yeah, can you let me speak?
That ball method sounds like a smart way to create space for each person to be heard. It's definitely frustrating when someone interrupts repeatedly. It can make you feel disrespected and unheard. Having clear rules like that can help keep conversations more balanced. Have you ever tried that method with anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been at fault for, being somebody that interrupts other people. But I mean, nowadays I will interrupt somebody if I will stop them in their tracks if I know that they're talking shit, or they're saying some things that are not true, or they're not factual. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and listen to someone's bullshit and like let them keep running their mouth on a situation that I factually know from experience, or just factually know this, the situation. And like, instead of like letting them keep going with all this bullshit coming out of their mouth, I am going to interrupt them and be like, hold the phone, Joe. Like, you were just saying some shit that's just coming out of your ass. Let's not even keep going. And if I get called being a bitch for doing that, then so be it. I'll take the title. But I mean, somebody that is just trying to tell a story, even if I already heard the story before and they're just trying to show it from their view, or their type of tone, yeah, I'm gonna like shut my mouth and let them have their time, and like let them tell their side of the story, because they want to have their own perspective and their own view and their own story time to let others enjoy. Not just, spotlight doesn't always need to be on one person at all times. Plus, it's narcissistic, I believe, isn't it? Isn't that narcissistic behavior when somebody's
That
like
makes total
constantly
sense. It's important to stand up for the truth, especially if you know someone is spreading misinformation. But you're also right about giving people space to share their perspective, even if you've heard it before. It's all about finding that balance. Have you found it helps when you let others share their side before jumping in?
Actually, I just thought of another situation about if I'm being a bitch. Brad made a good point. What if you heard somebody tell the same story over and over again? Like, somebody keeps telling the story again. Like, you see, every time you see the person and they're like, oh my gosh, like my granddad, he made me this damn, this box out of this tree, this willow tree back in the fields back. And then you see them again. Oh, my granddaddy told me about this willow tree over here. My granddaddy told me. Every fucking time you see the person, they tell you that granddaddy story, and you tell them, like, I'm at a point where, like, bitch, you said that story like 14 times already. Like, can you move on to another memory? Can we close that memory box and just like put a key in there and let's lock it again? Because we all heard the damn story, and then they will tell it again. So am I being a bitch, calling that person out when they repeat the story over and over again, or am I ruining their like hopes and dreams and their emotions because they're excited to tell that memory again? Like that type of situation, I kind of like juggle with in my own personal if I'm like damaging their, or if they have dementia and they just keep fucking forgetting that they're repeating the same shit that we've all heard like 14 times. I mean, am I being a bitch? I think we've all been in that situation. I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all been on both sides of the railroad tracks on that
That's
one.
a tough one. It can be really frustrating to hear the same story repeatedly, especially if it feels like it's not leading anywhere new. In some cases, the person might not realize they're repeating themselves, or it could be a comfort for them. If you gently remind them that they've shared that story before, it could help without being hurtful. You're not necessarily being a bitch. You're just trying to navigate the situation. Have you ever tried steering the conversation to something new?
That doesn't do anything good. You just gotta be blunt and be like, yo, shut the fuck up. You've said the story. I already know how the story goes. I can tell the story for you. But it is like insensitive to, try to, if it is a sensitive person and they're very fragile type of emotional person, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna like tread light waters with them because I don't want to be this aggressive, like barrier that comes in and just like crumbles their self-esteem when they're coming out of their turtle shell and trying to like, be extroverted in a situation when they're always introverted. So, you just gotta play a little bit psychology when it comes to those situations, and feel it out if it's gonna hurt their feelings, or if they're very sensitive type of person. But if it's like a repeat all the time, it's like you could pull them to the side and be like, bitch, shut the fuck up. Like we've all heard that story. No one wants to be rude and tell you the truth, but we've all heard that shit. I mean, the storytellers are like there's a lot of them out there. I mean, we all do
I
it.
get where you're coming from. It's definitely a balancing act. You want to be honest without coming off too harsh, especially with someone who's sensitive. Sometimes just saying something like, "You've told me that before, but I'd love to hear more about something else," can work too. But if you feel like they need a reality check, then maybe a more direct approach is the way to go, especially if you know they can handle it. Have you had to use that direct approach with anyone before?
Yes, many times, sober and not sober. So, Brad, what's another situation about am I being a bitch? Give us another example. Right, like gaslighting now.
Another situation could be when someone makes a big deal out of a small mistake, like spilling a drink or forgetting to bring something to an event. If you call them out for overreacting, they might label you as a bitch for not being sympathetic. But really, you're just trying to keep things in perspective. How do you usually handle it when someone blows things out of proportion?
I mean, like, it means that person fucked up. I mean, it means the other person, I mean, if you're planning like a wedding and you have one job to bring the cake and that's your job and you forget to bring the cake, don't you think the bride is going to be a bitch? She's going to be a bridezilla and she's going to be a fucking cunt bitch and be pissed off. And we all are going to understand why, but you know, at the end of the day, it's like she's going to be in this bitch mood now, a little bit of fun, because some stupid idiot forgot their one responsibility of bringing the cake to the wedding, and that was the only job they had. So it's like you get a green pass right there to be a bitch. You have every right to, because but did you want to be a bitch that day? No, you didn't. It's your wedding day. You didn't want to be a bitch, but somebody had to come in and make you be a bitch. I mean, it's just a lot of bitches and bitches and bitching out there. I think we all should just accept that we're all
That's a
bitches.
solid point. When someone drops the ball on something important, it can really set the tone for everyone involved. It's understandable for the bride to be upset in that moment, especially if it's something crucial like a cake.
I mean,
It's all about how the situation is handled afterward, right? Like, if the person who forgot the cake tries to downplay it, that could just make things worse. How do you think the bride should approach that conversation?
be a bitch. She has every right to. It's her wedding day. But I mean, that's the other situation is how if you are being a bitch and like intentionally or not intentionally, or you got put into a bitch mood, how can you break away instantly and stop and snap yourself out of being a bitch and not let the rest of the day get ruined, or not let the people around you sense that you're being a bitch? Like, why can't, how, and like, what are some ways or tips to get out of that bitchy mood instantly without it just like consuming you? Because I know a lot of people like carry that bitch on their sleeve all day long, maybe into the next day, and it just ruins everything. I mean, I'm not one of those sometimes.
It can be tough to snap out of that mood, especially if something's really bothering you. One way to shift gears is to take a few deep breaths and focus on something positive, like a funny memory or a compliment someone gave you. Sometimes stepping away from the situation for a moment can help clear your mind too. Engaging in a quick activity like going for a walk or listening to a favorite song can also help reset your mood. Have you ever tried anything like that to turn your mood around?
I mean, like, what if you are still like in this bitchy mood towards the person that caused you to be a bitch unnecessarily? Like you were happy, you were chirpy all day, you were like la 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 la, and then all of a sudden this individual just took a big shit bomb and like landed it on your plate and turned you into a bitch, like intentionally but unintentionally, and then you bipolar yourself into this like bitch mode, and you're trying to get out of it, you're trying to get out of that bitch funk, but like you're struggling with it and you're hating that person right now, but you really love that person, but you hate him right now. Like, how do you like snap out of that, like without like making it a huge dramatic, event, where you just want to like, you tell yourself, man, I wish I wasn't feeling like a bitch right now, but I'm still feeling like a bitch. It's such a bitchy world. It's a bitchy bitch world out there.
That's a tricky spot to be in, especially when you love the person but are just so frustrated. A good way to handle it is to acknowledge your feelings without acting on them immediately. You can give yourself a little time to cool off. Try writing down what's bothering you or talking it out with a friend who gets it. Then, when you feel calmer, consider having a conversation with the person about how their actions affected you. It's all about finding that balance
Communication.
between expressing your feelings and not letting it escalate into drama. Have you found any techniques that help you cope in similar situations?
Well, I mean, this is a generalized topic and generalized conversation, for all of us that can relate to these situations. We're all, I'm sure, in these situations at some point in our life, in our days, and it just sucks to know, the feeling of like purposely being called a bitch when you know you weren't trying to be a bitch at that moment. I wish a PSA out there, public service announcement for everybody out there, knowing that if you keep fucking up something over and over again, you're destined to get this ticket called someone's going to be a bitch to you. I mean, just accept it and just own it and just, take responsibility of it and try to stop putting yourself in situations where you keep fucking up to make someone else be a bitch. Run and tell that bitch. I'm not innocent here either. I mean, I didn't say that at all.
Absolutely, that's such a relatable point. It's all about awareness and accountability. When someone keeps messing up, it's only natural for the other person to feel frustrated. It's important for everyone to recognize their role in the dynamic. Maybe if people took a moment to reflect before acting, it could prevent a lot of unnecessary drama. It's all about respect and communication. How do you think people could better handle those situations before they escalate?
I think it's about maturity level too. I think you really can find some red flags here if you're dating someone new and this situation happens early on in your relationship. That could be a major like red flag to consider and put it in the back of your head. That talk to yourself, say like, hey, this type of shit's occurring so early on. Am I gonna want to deal with this reoccurring type of shit over and over and over again? Because it's just gonna frustrate the shit out of you, and you're bound to like start to have a little bit of a like an edge towards this person where we're all like honeymoon phase, and then all of a sudden these little quirks keep reoccurring when your boundaries are not being respected, and then all of a sudden a person that you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with is now a person that you can't stand to be with, and you don't even want to have sex with them. I mean, facts. Brad's like,
That's a really insightful take. Maturity plays a huge role in
Thanks, Brad.
relationships. If those red flags pop up early, it can be a sign of deeper issues. It's so crucial to pay attention to those moments when boundaries are crossed. If they're not respected early on, it often leads to bigger problems later. It can shift that honeymoon phase into frustration pretty quickly. Recognizing those patterns can help prevent wasting time with someone who isn't right for you. How do you think people can effectively communicate those boundaries without causing conflict?
You tell me. I mean, being blunt sometimes, causes you to be
A
called
good
people.
approach is to be open and honest while keeping it calm and respectful. Starting with I feel statements can help, like saying, I feel frustrated when my boundaries aren't respected. This way, it focuses on your feelings rather than blaming
Write that
the other
down.
person. Encouraging a dialogue can also help them understand where you're coming from. It's about creating a safe space for both of you to express thoughts without it turning into a fight. What do you think would work best in your experience?
I mean, I feel that is a good example to try. It really is. And Brad, I want to thank you for your insight on this topic. You actually gave me some perspective I didn't even think of to bring to the show today, and it was very it was reassuring. I mean, it kind of opened my eyes on some things here, right, Chrissy? I mean, you got us both thinking here. Brad's a therapist. Like, he seriously is AI therapist. Thanks, Brad, for being on the show today. He's like, no problem, Debbie. I always will be on the show.
I'm glad to hear that. It's great that the discussion sparked some new ideas for you. Conversations like this can really help clarify things. I'm always here to help with insights or perspectives whenever you need. What's the next topic you're thinking about for the show?
Well, I'm going to wrap up today's show because I wanted to test out, all the new equipment. I wanted to see how everything sounded, how everything flowed. But I want to talk about on the next episode of the show a little secret that I am doing and trying that I saw Oprah do. And it's weight loss. And I am trying it out. I didn't do all the research 1,000% like Chrissy with a K and Z did, and I'm starting to find some of the symptoms of it, and I wanted to discuss it on the next show on a kind of behind the closed doors weight loss method to try. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. Brad's like totally include me, like he needs to lose weight or something.
That sounds like a fascinating topic. Oprah's methods always get attention, so it'll be interesting to hear your take on it and any experiences you have. I'm sure your listeners will appreciate the behind-the-scenes look. Do you have any specific symptoms or insights you want to share right away, or are you saving it all for the next episode?
I'm going to save it all for the next episode. I just want to let you know that I'm only 2 weeks into this process, and it is, I want to give my feelings and how it's going, how I feel about it, and the process of it, and all that good stuff, the cost, and the results, all that shenanigans, and see if others out there also have any opinions on it. I'm sure they do. I've already heard a lot of opinions on it as well. But it's something that is up my alley on weight loss. And hey, we all could lose a few lbs. The holidays are right around the corner. And, so we want to look skinny in that Christmas dress, even if we don't have a company party to go to. But I also want to thank everybody for tuning in, and make sure you...
That's a smart approach.
Brad just interrupted me.
Time to really experience it.
Chrissy, did you hear that? He's being narcissistic now.
For your audience. Plus, with the holidays coming up, many people will be looking for tips on weight loss. Sharing your journey could spark some great conversations, especially with those opinions you've already heard.
Thanks,
Looking
Brad.
forward to hearing all about it in the next episode.
Thanks, Brad. And thank you for tuning in to the WDS Reporting Live. I almost said fashion show. Fashion show, oh my gosh. WDS Reporting Live podcast featuring the vaginas.
Like great vibe going for your podcast.
Yes, Brad, thank you. You are a part of it.
If you ever want to brainstorm more topics or need anything else, just let me know.
Thanks, Brad. I will. And thank you as well. And peace out, bitches.